Now, your local forecast, accurate and dependable from the Weather Channel. Now, your local forecast, accurate and dependable from the Weather Channel.
Is in effect at this time in Missouri. These are where storms are strongest. We still have some fairly potent thunderstorms across Wisconsin. They're heading southeast at about 30 miles per hour. They seem to be heading right towards Chicago, but they're kind of dying out before they get there. So you might have a pretty quiet night in Chicago. We'll watch for thunderstorms coming in there a little bit later. Alrighty, here through Missouri, right around Columbia, we have reports of possible tornadoes, and also with the cell in Ray and Clay County, a confirmed tornado on the ground here. Radar indicator with these cells. The counties that do have tornado warnings, Boone, Cooper, Howard, and Monotone, and these tornado warnings are in effect until 11 o'clock. That means there's a possible tornado out there, and if you're in those counties, you should take cover immediately. That will be until 11. The thunderstorms at that time should be out of your area. We'll wait to see if anything is reissued. Alrighty, down to the south again. Thunderstorms here quieting down, looking a little bit better. In Florida, we had special marine advisories out earlier. Those thunderstorms have moved out around Melbourne and Vero Beach. Little rain still in the area, but it looks like things are really quieting down pretty nicely. And around Atlanta, hardly any rain left at this point, but we had a big cluster of storms come in from the west. Carroll County, trees reported down around Roswell, Georgia, north of Atlanta. Reports of some hail earlier, and also up towards Lake Lanier we had some severe thunderstorms. Columbus now seeing a pretty strong thunderstorm cell, and we have a little bit of rain around Tuscaloosa and southwestern parts of Alabama and Clark County. We do have a severe thunderstorm. Low pressure working its way a little bit farther to the east, so things will quiet down for you in Missouri, but Indiana and Ohio, Kentucky, you should be prepared for some strong thunderstorms tomorrow afternoon, and they may work their way as far south as Alabama and Mississippi, again with the northwest also getting a few showers from the next storm coming ashore. All right, let's check our longer range forecast. Our look ahead is sponsored by True Value Hardware. Help is just around the corner. So it's Monday, just around the corner. Things don't change much through Monday. We see 70s, which is actually a little bit below normal for Cleveland. And then looks like Chicago will be in the low 80s, which is normal for this time of year. 80s down to around Atlanta, we hope for you here. 90s to 100s, look at this, 110 to 120 in the southwest. No break from this June heat wave. July tends to be a little bit cooler if we see a little bit more moisture coming in and afternoon thunder showers, but none of that expected this week. So very dry and very hot. The stormy weather will definitely be here in the east. We have one front that catches up to you, Boston to D.C., and down to about Savannah and Georgia, chance of thunderstorms. But the strongest cells will be here in the Midwest. Minneapolis, Des Moines, possibly Chicago late in the day on Monday, threat of severe weather. That storm system works to the east coast, and look how slowly it moves out. It'll be here through Wednesday, even Thursday, a chance of isolated thunderstorms from Maine as far south as Florida. High temperatures have built up over the southwest while heat.
Well, good morning, and thanks for tuning into the Weather Channel. I'm Kim Perez alongside of Dave Schwartz this hour. And you folks in Florida have definitely had your share of rainfall this summer, but the poor folks in the Northeast, they have hardly had a drop of rain to speak of. And the thunderstorms that rumbled through Boston earlier today produced, well, about 1/10 of an inch of rain. Not very much. Now, that's about all the rain the city has seen this month. For the year, there are about 11.5 inches in the hole. And for the next few days, Bostonians will just have to enjoy the clear skies and mild temperatures and no rain. Well, meanwhile, the folks in Oregon got experience with condensation in a different form, fog. Now, fog reduced visibility to about a quarter. Temperatures were quite a bit warmer, highs in the mid to upper 80s. Now, the forecast is we're supposed to look at some more fog through the evening hours around Astoria, and could reduce visibility to a quarter mile or so. And even some fog in the forecast for the Ohio Valley down in through Georgia, where a lot of residual moisture after the thunderstorms early today and on the front. So if you're heading out this morning, take a look at the forecast and see if fog could be a hindrance to your drive. Now, as far as departures from normal, especially in the Pacific Northwest, where we had fog, was a big problem yesterday morning. Temperatures were definitely not a problem. We had record highs, at least tying the record, around Oregon, and that was 92. Meanwhile, most of the Pacific Northwest, mainly the west anyway, was way above normal. Now, down here across Texas, things were a little bit below normal, and that's because of Hurricane Ismael. A lot of the moisture from that, a lot of the cloud cover from that moved into Texas, and we had a lot of rain today, and just has kept things really kind of crummy down in that area. Now, here's Portland. Let's take a look at some of the statistics here. The high for Thursday was 92, and the forecast a little bit cooler for tomorrow, about 89. Now, the average September high is 77. So, again, they are pretty much above normal for this time of the year, and I'm sure they are not at least sad about that fact. Okay, now the forecast again, 89 but partly cloudy skies for Portland on Friday, and the ridge will continue across the northwest, and that's what's keeping things pretty toasty in that area. The jet stream, though, across the northern plains, a different story. Will bring a lot of those cold fronts that bring the cold air, or at least the cooler air, with it down across this area, and that's where we're seeing the frost advisories for northern Wisconsin and a large part of Michigan here. Meanwhile, the southwest is contend with Hurricane Ismael. What will happen to Ismael? Well, the forecast is to bring it into New Mexico, maybe not as a tropical storm, but the remnants of it, and a lot of the moisture from it will move into New Mexico and Arizona, bring lots of heavy rainfall and possibly flooding conditions here. So we need to really be careful if you're heading, driving across the roads in New Mexico and Texas over the next several days. Cool air, though, the rule for the northern plains, not looking too bad, and unfortunately the drought continues for the northeast. And there's the high pressure that will bring the dry air. The front went through, we had some showers, we did have some severe weather in New York and in Massachusetts, and Stockbridge had some severe weather last night as the thunderstorms moved through, but the front now is well offshore, and again by the morning hours won't even have to worry about it. A lot of that moisture in the morning hours will bring the rains in through New Mexico and Texas, and in the afternoon again just getting inundated with rain. We can't emphasize enough how much rainfall they could be getting. Probably 5 to 6 inches possible in the mountains, so again we're in a serious situation here with a lot of that tropical moisture moving into that area. Now across Florida, well, with the front kind of down in this area here and ahead of it some impulses, we could see some more thunderstorm activity for tomorrow. Now behind the front, look at the temperatures in the 30s and 40s for Friday morning, and that's why we're seeing those frost advisories up for the Great Lakes area. Now, in the 60s and 70s in this area, and that's because of all the moisture and the cloud cover. It will keep things pretty warm in this area and kind of sultry, and again down in the southwest in the 80s, which is kind of normal for this time of the year. One more time of 80s, I'd say one more day of 80s before the next front gets through, and we won't see 80s for a long time after that. And as you can see here, 70s already starting to lurk in the ways there, and the 50s, and by Tuesday, check this out, looks pretty cold there. Now, so thunderstorms will continue across the east, and it looks like maybe Sunday, Monday, chance of showers and thunderstorms for the northwest. Pacific outlook coming up next, and we'll talk about some of the record highs. Come back and join us.
Yes, it's coming to me. Just a moment.
Some interesting features here. Well, we don't see much here in the interior sections, and we'll take a look at these high temperatures. Things got really warm in this area here, but along the coast, now we had fog, we had low clouds. As you can see, we still have low clouds along the coastal areas, Astoria all the way down to southern Oregon along the coastal areas. Temperatures a little bit mild today with low clouds again and some fog that, you know, lifted and had low clouds for most of the day. There's some of the highs, 92 around Portland, and for Portland, that's way above normal for this time of the year. Their normal is about 77, so we're looking for temperatures a little bit cooler tomorrow, about 89, and for Central California, though, very warm in the mid-90s for the interior sections, and again for the south. Look at this, still in the 100s in the deserts, looking pretty good. Next, we have European weather with Dave Schwartz.
Uncover the secrets of weather. Experience a Force 4 hurricane. Chase a tornado. Find out how weather research is being conducted today. Exposures. Travel with the Weather Channel as we relive some of the most intriguing weather phenomena in history. Watch Exposures every Saturday and Sunday, noon Eastern, 9 Pacific, only on the Weather Channel.
Well, it's time for the tropical update in this very busy tropical season. We've already had 13 named storms. We're down to Maryland now, which is our 7th hurricane, and next is Noel. I wonder if it'll be in time for Christmas. After that, Opal, and it's possible we could see all the way down to the R's, and things are still kind of active off the off the coast of Africa. Now let's take a look at there we go, Maryland. And right now Maryland is just west of Guadalupe, and the track takes it to the northwest. Now the winds are 85 miles per hour. That has gone up, and the pressure has dropped to 978 millibars, and has dropped a lot in the last several hours, 7 millibars in the last around 4 hours or so. And again, it's moving to the northwest at 13 miles per hour. And if you're keeping track of this, it's at 16.5 north and 62.8 west. And again, that's the 2 a.m. update, and we'll have a 5 o'clock update Eastern time, so make sure you come back and join us, and we'll give you the particulars about 5 a.m. Okay, next we'll take a look at the winds, and right now the tropical storm winds extend about 100, 115 miles out, and the hurricane winds, they're expanding a little bit more over the last day or so, and the storm is moving a little bit further away from the islands, and that's helping to let it get a little bit more organized. We're seeing the pressure drop, and we're seeing a more defined, well, it's hard to see an eye, but they did find an eye when they sent a recon flight out there. So again, the forecast is the track should take Hurricane Marilyn up close to the U.S. Virgin Islands and the British Virgin Islands, and maybe just skirt Puerto Rico, and maybe hit directly St. Thomas, and these islands could be right in the direct path of Hurricane Marilyn. And again, it is forecast to maybe intensify slightly, but again, the hurricane force winds, which are good, are in a very compact little area, and maybe it moves fast enough the damage won't be as devastating. Here's the hurricane warnings from Guadalupe all the way up to St. Martin again, the whole island of Puerto Rico, and St. Thomas and the U.S. Virgin Islands and the British Virgin Islands. Now let's take a close-up look at this. Now this is a IR shot, and here's you can't see an eye, but you can bet it's somewhere in where the higher cloud tops are, and you can see it's getting more organized now that it's moving a little bit further west and north of the islands, where there's some mountains in that area that have kept it from probably getting as organized as it could earlier today. So the forecast takes it just in the northwest direction, and again, those that are in the path should be taking precautions now. And out further east now, this is where a lot of these storms come from. And these storms are pretty far to the south for this time of the year. Again, we'll start to see things drift to the south when they come off Africa when we get towards the end of hurricane season. But again, south of the Cape Verde Islands, and these tropical disturbances anyway, they're not very organized. We're not expecting them to develop anytime soon, but again, we have to watch them once they get further away and closer to the Caribbean or closer to the warmer waters. Now further west in the Caribbean, again, a tropical disturbance here moved across the central parts of Central America, and some thunderstorms in that area here. Now it looks like pretty decent development in that area, and they're not looking for anything in the next several hours. But now let's go further west. Hurricane Ismael, 11 o'clock update here. It's north of Los Mochis, and again, it's moving to the north. It's about 80 miles an hour right now, and the forecast takes it up in
time that we start rearranging our closets, start time to bring out those sweaters and jackets, because temperatures will be turning cooler across a good part of the country, especially so up across the north. We'll watch the polar jet stream kind of sagging southward, and with that, well, there will be some cooler air making its arrival across the upper Midwest and across the Great Lakes. And you really start to feel the cooling effects by Monday. 50s up around Minneapolis, cool readings too for the western lakes, some 60s sliding in towards Chicago, and still rather cool and fall-like too across the northeastern corner of the country. From Boston to New York City, temperatures upper 60s and lower 70s. For the weekend, it will be kind of wet and damp up around the Great Lakes, a chance for some scattered showers and storms as some disturbances get caught up in that jet stream and they slide off towards the east. Maybe a widely scattered shower or thunderstorm across the southeast, but your best chance of seeing some rain will be across the southwest. All that tropical moisture from Hurricane Ismael may bring some locally heavy rains, and the rain starts to slide off towards the east. Stick around, we'll extend that forecast coming up.
Look what Daddy can juggle with his Nokia cellular phone, a rubber duck, and a teddy bear. A Nokia cellular phone, a rubber duck, and a teddy bear. And with my Nokia cellular phone.
Look at the next 5 8. Here's the current weather map, and I'll tell you what, it doesn't get much better than this. A big sprawling dome of high pressure remains anchored around the Great Lakes and the Northeast. And complements of that high pressure cell, we'll be seeing wall-to-wall sunshine today. Green Bay, Chicago, Detroit. More delightful weather too for Boston and for New York City. No problems throughout most of the West, but across the Southwest, an entirely different story. All that moisture from now Tropical Storm Ishmael continues to feed in across the Southwest. We'll be seeing some locally heavy rains today, and certainly the possibility for some flash flooding. Up towards the north, though, disturbance could bring some nasty thunderstorms around Minnesota, especially around the Twin Cities. Watch out for some threatening skies. And temperature-wise, well, actually not too bad for most of the country. 50s, 60s, even a few 70s as we head farther towards the south. A complete look at this morning's weather coming up next. Hurricane Marilyn, the fourth hurricane to hit the Caribbean this season, ripped through Barbados, Dominica, and Martinique yesterday with up to 80-mile-per-hour winds. Meanwhile, in the lower 48, Hurricane Ishmael contributes to the rain event in West Texas and parts of Arizona. We'll have details on this and the forecast for your part of the country coming up next on WeatherScope This Morning, Friday, September 15th.
A scope of coverage you won't find anywhere else. This is WeatherScope This Morning.
Hey, good morning. It's Friday on this September the 15th. That's what it is. This is Vivian Brown, and I'm Cheryl Lemke. And we are certainly earning our paychecks today. All sorts of stuff to talk about. There's some cooler weather coming in across the Northeast, even a chance for some scattered hard frost by tonight. And elsewhere, the tropics remain very active.
I tell you, we were dealing with Hurricane Luis last month, and this month it is Hurricane Marilyn. Let's give you the very latest from the National Hurricane Center as of 8 o'clock this morning. So you're into the very latest that we've received now from the National Hurricane Center. It centers this hurricane at 17 degrees north, 63.6 degrees west. That makes it about 95 miles east-southeast of the island of St. Croix. Winds of 90 miles an hour. So
Now, your local forecast, accurate and
may be causing major headaches across the Southwest, but around Florida we have problems of a different sort, and that is with the red tide. An algae bloom known as the red tide has killed literally thousands of fish along Florida's Gulf coastal beaches. The area currently being affected extends from southern Lee County northward over towards Sarasota and Manatee County. The dead fish are being washed on shore and creating a horrible smell for residents. And up in the Northeast, we've had some beneficial rains over the last couple of days. We had some rain yesterday for Boston, only 1/10 of an inch of rain, but still that was enough to help them out just a little bit. The rainfall deficit, though, is still pretty bad around the Boston metro area. You're still about 11.5 inches down for the year. Now, indeed, we've had some beneficial rains, as I was mentioning, throughout the northeastern corridor of the country, typically 1/10 to 1/2, maybe even close to an inch of rain for some locales in the last 24 hours, ending as of 8 o'clock yesterday morning. There was also a lot of rain, too, that fell to the southeast. 2 to 4 inches of rain, very common across the Tennessee Valley and the Deep South, but even heavier rains fell across Texas. A lot of this, again, in response to Hurricane Ishmael, or now Tropical Storm Ishmael, and all this deep tropical moisture flowing in. We've had as much as 6 inches of rain for portions of western Texas. Here's the national radar picture this morning, and the rain continues nonstop down here around the southern plain states, but in the northeast, where we could stand to see some rainfall, unfortunately a very dry scenario. We are looking at some showers and storms, though, flaring up along coastal waters of North and South Carolina, so kind of a rough morning for boating or fishing. Showers and storms lined up just off the coast of Wilmington and Cape Fear, and more rain draped southward over towards around Savannah. A big batch of moisture, too, flaring up across the upper Midwest. Showers with some embedded thunderstorms. They're rumbling across the Dakotas and now taking aim on west central Minnesota. There's been some showers and storms around Alexandria and around Fergus Falls. And we do think that in time some of those showers and storms will start to pick up around Minneapolis and St. Paul, so keep that in mind. Certainly don't leave the house this morning without a raincoat or an umbrella. Farther towards the south, all that tropical moisture flowing in. We've had some steady rains plaguing most of eastern New Mexico around Roosevelt, Lee, and Eddy counties. Some steady, heavy rains. Right now it's raining at a pretty good clip around Clovis, New Mexico, and some moderate downpours for Lubbock, Texas. Be especially careful along Interstate 29, likewise I-40 extending back towards Oklahoma. It is going to be a rough go this morning as you head off to work or school. Here's the current weather map, and although it's very soggy across the southern plain states, we have some beautiful weather elsewhere around the country. High pressure dominates most of the west, keeping it pretty quiet from Seattle southward over towards San Diego. And just a delightful day dawning across the northeast. Now, granted, we are seeing patchy, dense fog around the lower lakes and around the Ohio Valley, but the fog should be burning off later on this morning and eventually giving way to wall-to-wall sunshine from Detroit northward over towards Boston. Temperature-wise, actually not looking too bad. Maybe just a light jacket or sweater around Minneapolis and Chicago with temperatures in the 50s. Elsewhere, kind of balmy right along the Gulf Coast. It's 74 degrees this morning for New Orleans and a balmy 79 degrees for Tampa. Let's check out the forecast. We'll see how warm it's going to get for later on this afternoon. And here's the weather map. We really see high pressure dominating most of the weather across the northeast and across the west, keeping the weather very quiet. But down across the south, a day for the rain gear, with more heavy, steady rains likely for Texas and New Mexico. Lots of sunshine, though, across the northeast, so break out the sunglasses. From Pittsburgh and Philadelphia northward towards down east Maine, what more could you ask for? And temperatures very comfortable, too. Lots of 60s and 70s, so again, just a light jacket is about all that you'll need. By tonight, though, we're calling for some very cool temperatures throughout the northeast, maybe even a hard frost setting up for sections of the northeast come later on tonight. Across the southeast, well, just about any place will be fair game to see a few hit or miss showers and storms. We think the greatest concentration, though, will be around Savannah and Charleston and running southward over towards Miami and Homestead, Florida. And then even heavier rains, though, soaking western Texas, so watch out for some localized flooding. As far as temperatures are concerned, they're pretty warm across the south, still lots of 80s and 90s, but with the extensive cloud cover here across western Texas, that will help to hold back temperatures, so highs at best only in the 70s. Across the Midwest, showers and storms flaring up today. Watch out for some especially potent ones right around Minneapolis come later this afternoon. And again, temperatures, well, actually kind of mild throughout the plain states. Out towards the west, more fair skies too, running from Seattle down towards San Francisco. But again, one of our worst spots today will be across the southwest. Heavy soaking rains there. Flash flood watches have been posted for parts of New Mexico and for West Texas.
Well, we do have a taste of fall in the air, especially over New England tonight, with temperatures dropping into the 20s and 30s. We'll have more on that coming up next.
Quality tools for every season.
And a good Friday morning to you, and thanks for tuning into the Weather Channel as we check out your tropical update. Now, right now, we are right in the midst of the heart of the hurricane season, and we certainly have a lot of things going on out there. First of all, Hurricane Marilyn. Right now, it's packing winds of 90 miles per hour and lifting off towards the northwest. The central pressure has dropped somewhat compared to what it was earlier this morning. The central pressure has now dropped by some 3 millibars, and by that usually is a strong sign that the hurricane is strengthening, and indeed the winds have increased somewhat from what it was earlier this morning, so now the winds are up to 90 miles per hour. Again, it's churning a path throughout the eastern Caribbean. Now, at least the hurricane force winds are very compact right around the eye of the hurricane. The hurricane force winds extend out some 30 miles from the eye of the hurricane, and the tropical storm force winds extend out some 90 miles. And right now we have been seeing some squally conditions, some strong winds across the northern islands around St. Thomas and St. Croix. There have been some strong winds gusting from 35 up to 40 miles per hour, so certainly some very blustery conditions throughout this region. Now, the hurricane is forecast to possibly strengthen somewhat as we go through the next 24 hours. Also, it will more than likely continue on its northwestward track, and at that rate, the highest strike probability would take it somewhere across the Virgin Islands, or quite possibly it could clip the eastern coast of Puerto Rico. So this is our highest strike probability, at least at this particular point. At this point, hurricane warnings continue throughout the northern islands and extending westbound over through Puerto Rico. And that means hurricane force winds could be felt quite possibly within the next 24 hours or so. Also, you'll be seeing some very rough seas and choppy waters throughout this area. Small craft advisories have been posted. Also, we have heavy surf advisories and coastal flood watches too that have been posted. It may not be uncommon to see 5 to 8 inches of rain in the path of this tropical systems, and that is very common with tropical systems. They usually do drop some tremendous amounts of rain. So far around Martinique, we have had reports of over 4 inches of rain, so some heavy soaking rains in association with Hurricane Marilyn. Here's our latest satellite picture of the hurricane. It's a very compact, very organized, a very well organized hurricane at this particular point. Some good outflow, a lot of deep convection in association with it, and again, it continues to churn off towards the north and the west. On a broader perspective, we see the hurricane again swirling in place around the Caribbean, but just north of that, we have the remnants of Tropical Depression number 14. Right now, it's a low pressure area parked here across the Atlantic, and we think that that tropical depression, or at least the remnants of that tropical depression, could have a major impact on Maryland because it may help to steer Maryland off in a northerly fashion. At least that's what our present thinking is right now. Elsewhere across the Atlantic, we have another tropical wave approaching the northern coast of South America, and yet again another tropical wave that's now just to the west of the Cape Verde Islands. On closer inspection, though, we have some very quiet conditions throughout the northern Gulf, but across the southern Gulf and across the Bay of Campeche, a lot of showers and thunderstorms. Here we have a tropical wave that's been gliding off towards the west, really increasing the thunderstorm activity down here across the Bay of Campeche and across the Yucatan Channel, and more thunderstorms too rolling off the west central coast of Mexico. Now, one of our bigger concerns too as we head towards the East Pacific is what used to be Hurricane Ishmael. Now it's a tropical storm Ishmael as it's coming inland, encountering a lot of friction, a lot of land area throughout this region. So the tropical system continues to weaken, and right now it's downgraded to a tropical storm status. It's still packing winds that are very strong though at 70 miles per hour. It's lifting off towards the north, and it's pumping a good deal of moisture in across the southwestern portions of the country. So we'll certainly have to watch out for some localized flooding as we go through time. Lastly, we head out towards the West Pacific, and we have a super typhoon out here, Super Typhoon Oscar. Believe it or not, it's packing winds over 150 miles per hour, and it could be clipping the southern coast of Japan as we go through the next 24 hours. Well, let's check out the forecast now closer to home, and this edition of your Weekend Outlook is sponsored by Midas, the Midas way, the way it should be. And across the north, you might be scrambling for a jacket or a sweater. We're certainly seeing signs of change taking place with some cooler airs rushing down from Canada. And with the polar jet now sagging southward, some cooler air is invading parts of the upper Midwest, the Great Lakes, and across the Northeast. And you really start to feel the cooling effects by Monday. Temperatures falling to the 50s around the Twin Cities, on into Rhinelander and around Sault Ste. Marie. Cool 60s sliding over towards Chicago, and still very cool and fall-like too across the Northeast. Temperatures upper 60s and lower 70s around Boston and around New York City. And with that jet stream skirting right across the north, it will be driving in some weak disturbances, keeping it rather unsettled around the Great Lakes and around the Northeast. Meanwhile, a few hit or miss showers across the Southeast, but the best concentration of rains will be across the Southwest. All that moisture from Ishmael could bring some localized flooding, some heavy rains across the South. Stay tuned for more weather.
Dear Midas, back in the 70s, I purchased the Midas muffler for my 15-year-olds.
Well, if you're going to be doing some traveling across the south-central portions of the country, you might be doing a lot of slipping and sliding on the highways and byways. A good deal of moisture continues to surge northward up through Texas and across Oklahoma. Kind of a slow go today across the Will Rogers Turnpike, likewise I-40, also I-29 across the Texas Panhandle, being inundated by some heavy, heavy rains, so just really a slow go this morning. Back to our weather maps we go. Needless to say, with all this rain coming into play, the ground's very moist and very saturated, and with some additional showers and thunderstorms cropping up throughout the course of the day, there is a very high potential for some localized flooding. Flash flood watches have been posted from Arizona through New Mexico and extending on into western fringes of Texas. So indeed, a lot of sloppy traveling down towards the south. Also, we watch an upper level disturbance coming in across the upper Midwest. Here too, a chance for some showers and storms, maybe some really potent ones around Minneapolis, St. Paul for later on. And the winds too kind of feisty today throughout the upper Midwest. And last but not least, we have some locally dense fog throughout the Ohio Valley and the Appalachians. Current weather is coming up next. Hurricane Marilyn, the fourth hurricane to hit the Caribbean this season, ripped through Barbados, Dominica, and Martinique yesterday with up to 80-mile-per-hour winds. Meanwhile, in the lower 48, Hurricane Ishmael contributes to the rain event in West Texas and parts of Arizona. We'll have details on this and the forecast for your part of the country coming up next on WeatherScope this morning, Friday, September 15th.
For a scope of coverage you won't find anywhere else, this is WeatherScope This Morning, sponsored by 100% Colombian Coffee.
And good Friday morning to you, and thanks for tuning into the Weather Channel with Vivian Brown here, and I'm CHERYL LEMKE. And we're right in the heart of the hurricane season, and boy, we have a lot of busy things to talk about throughout the tropics. We have Hurricane Ishmael affecting the southwest, and elsewhere Hurricane Marilyn causing some big problems across the Caribbean.
I'll tell you, dealing with Luis just a month ago, and now it's Marilyn, and I'll tell you what, still some big problems over the northern parts of the Lesser Antilles. Let's take you into the Maryland area area. We'll see what's going on with Marilyn, the very latest information we've received from the National Hurricane Center. It centers the storm in Mexico and West Texas, where an additional 5 inches of rain possible. And Cheryl has more details on this.
We'll tell you what a difference a day can make, especially for the Northeast, as we watch some welcome rain sweeping across the area yesterday. Again today, we're going to be seeing some fair skies throughout the area, so rainfall kind of sparse throughout the Northeast. But I'll tell you what, in the last 24 hours or so, we have had some impressive rainfall tallies. Take a look at this. Typically, a ½ an inch to an inch of rain fell over portions of the Northeast. Great news for the drought-stricken Northeast. Even the Southeast picked up some significant rains too yesterday. Typically 2 to 4 inches worth pelting the Tennessee Valley and the Deep South. Heaviest rains, though, have been across the Southwest. A lot of this due to the moisture from Ishmael. We've been seeing some heavier rains, close to a ½ a foot of rain, in fact, for portions of southwestern Texas. Here's a national radar picture this morning where we could stand to see some rains across the Northeast. Well, again, a very dry scenario being painted for today. But there have been some showers and thunderstorms closer just off the Carolina coast. A rough morning for boating or fishing. A big batch of showers and storms from just off the coast of Wilmington and Cape Fear and running southward to just off the coast of St. Simon's Island. We're seeing more showers, though, flowing up across the upper Midwest. Showers with some embedded thunderstorms rumbling around Aberdeen and around Watertown, South Dakota. And we're also seeing a lot of moisture again flowing into the southwest. Again, much of this in response to Hurricane Ishmael. As the moisture continues to feed across New Mexico and Texas, be careful if you're heading off to work or school this morning. I-29 across the Texas Panhandle. Likewise, I-40 right there in Oklahoma will certainly be a slow go this morning. Here's our current weather map, and it features all that tropical moisture flowing in across the southwest. Meanwhile, beautiful conditions across the west, and a gorgeous day too across the northeast, thanks to that big dome of high pressure. Fair skies today for Boston and for New York City. We'll see how long that nice weather will last. We'll check out the forecast with Vivian.
Okay, let's begin with the midday hour. High pressure. The weather peak area must be the northeastern corridor with a lot of sunshine, but downright wet over the southwest.
And fall is rapidly approaching. The beginning of fall starts September 23rd, and already starting to feel the signs of change and some coolish temperatures coming in across the northeast this afternoon. Now 17 minutes after the top of the hour, and time for our aviation segment. Certainly some rough conditions for the pilots today throughout the southwest. Extensive cloud cover, lots of showers with some embedded thunderstorms, and a lot of soggy weather with low visibility stretching from New Mexico through Texas, likewise extending northward through Oklahoma. Meanwhile, as we head out across the west, generally some quiet conditions out here. Not a whole lot in the way of cloud cover, but down across the south, typically MVFR and IFR flying conditions, so you'll certainly need to allow yourself some extra time to get to your destination today. Winds aloft, only around 5. The strongest winds located around the Great Lakes and across the northeast. Again, the winds pick up even further at around 10,000 feet. And finally, at the jet stream level, some very strong winds ripping right across the northern lakes here. The polar jet kind of sagging southward. We're seeing some strong winds throughout this belt, typically winds averaging about 80 miles per hour or higher. Stick around, you're making some long-range forecast plans. We'll check out the forecast for the next 5 days coming up in just a moment.
I have an Audi today. For the nearest dealer, call 1-800-4AUDI.
Well, it's still a rather bleak situation across the northeast. Now, we had some welcome rains the last couple of days, but unfortunately the dry scenario pretty much continues, and we're still looking at a very dismal rainfall deficit, at least around the New York City metro area, pushing close to a foot below normal rainfall. Even worse, though, around South Weymouth and Worcester, Massachusetts. Boy, the rainfall deficit quite impressive at this particular point, so we could certainly stand to see more rain around this area, but no rain coming up at least for today. As we zoom in closer, though, we have had some rains going on this morning across the upper Midwest. Generally some rain showers with some embedded thunderstorms. They're still rumbling across North and South Dakota and now picking up for west central Minnesota. All these showers and thunderstorms generally gliding off towards the east. Finally, we head towards the southwest. Here the rain's going to be quite copious today. A lot of moisture from Hurricane Ishmael is feeding in across the southwest, so watch out for some localized flooding. The local weather's coming up shortly.
For a scope of coverage you won't find anywhere else, watch WeatherScope, coming up after your local forecast, only
Hurricane Marilyn, the fourth hurricane to hit the Caribbean this season, ripped through Barbados, Dominica, and Martinique yesterday with up to 80-mile-per-hour winds. Meanwhile, in the lower 48, Hurricane Ishmael contributes to the rain event in West Texas and parts of Arizona. We'll have details on this and the forecast for your part of the country coming up next on WeatherScope This Morning, Friday, September 15th.
For a scope of coverage you won't find anywhere else, this is WeatherScope This Morning.
A good Friday morning to you, and thanks for tuning in to the Weather Channel with Vivian Brown here, and I'm CHERYL LEMKE. We have a very busy weather pattern today. We have some showers and storms breaking out across the country, and a lot of the moisture across the southwest is in direct response to Hurricane Ishmael, and you're going to be saying more about that in just a moment.
I'll tell you what, we have a hurricane out across the Pacific. We have another one in the Atlantic approaching the northern Caribbean, eastern Caribbean islands. And I'll tell you what, after dealing with Luis, now we have to deal with Marilyn.
One thing after another.
I know. Let's see what's going on, the very latest with Hurricane Marilyn out across the Atlantic. The latest information
it can make, especially for the Northeast, as yesterday we watched some welcome rain sweeping across the area. In Boston, residents were pulling out the umbrellas to deal with the rain and the wind. The storms, though, only dropped a tenth of the with highs near 65. Now, as far as rainfall is concerned, some of the rain, though, has been rather generous in the last 24 hours, actually ending yesterday morning. Some locales across the Northeast picked up a ½ inch to 1 inch of rain, just what the doctor ordered. Again, though, the rainfall deficit is so bad that we still need a lot more rain to really totally alleviate the deficit, but every little bit seems to help. We even had more rains, too, across the southeast, but the heaviest rains were right here in Texas. A lot of it, though, in response to Hurricane Ishmael, as we're seeing a lot of tropical moisture flowing in, and some parts of Texas yesterday picked up close to a ½ foot of rain. Now, for today, though, again, dry conditions across the Northeast, but there have been some showers and thunderstorms breaking out around the country. Some of these showers and storms poised just off the Carolina coast. So kind of a rough morning for boating or for fishing. A lot of showers and storms just off the coast of Cape Fear, and more wet weather, too, just to the east of Charleston. Then we watch a big batch of rains flaring up across the upper Midwest, showers with some embedded thunderstorms rolling through the upper plain states. And lastly, we head towards the southwest. All this tropical moisture again feeding inland. Steady rain so far for Eddy and Lee counties of eastern New Mexico. More rains, too, spreading in across the Texas Panhandle, and the rain, too, surging in across Oklahoma. If you're heading off to work or school this morning, be really careful along Interstate 40 back here in Oklahoma. Likewise, I-29, I-10, and I-20 across Texas could also be a little bit on the wet side. Here's our current weather map this morning, and we take you into the forecast for today. And it shows this front kind of dangling across the southeast. Now, that front will serve as the focal point for more showers and storms. I think the greatest concentration of showers and storms, though, will be across the southwest as this moisture continues to feed northward. A lot of rains encompassing New Mexico and Texas today, even spreading back towards Oklahoma, likewise Arizona and Louisiana, and for some wet conditions, too. But across the Northeast, I think that's going to be our pick spot today. Plenty of sunshine, a big dome of high pressure parked across the area, so a beautiful day for Boston, New York City, Pittsburgh, and Philly, and temperatures not looking too bad.
Even though we could use additional rain in the Northeast today, I'd say just another beautiful one. Can have lunch outside today.
Stick around. Coming up shortly, we'll check out the weather in Europe.
If your car isn't performing like it used to,
let Napa.
And a good Friday morning to you, and thanks for tuning into the Weather Channel as we find out that it's now about 13 minutes before the top of the hour and time for your tropical update. And I'll tell you what, we have a very busy tropical season. We have all sorts of things to talk about, so let's get right into it. First of all, Hurricane Marilyn. Right now it's packing winds of 85 miles per hour, and it's roughly centered about 120 miles east-southeast of St. Croix, and it's lifting off towards the northwest rather quickly at about 13 miles per hour or so. Central pressure has now dropped. This is the lowest pressure that this hurricane has reached since it has become a hurricane. It's right now at 974 millibars, so it's a very deep tropical system out here churning across the Caribbean. Now, it's a very compact system, too, and the winds are really mainly felt right around the core of the hurricane. The hurricane force winds extend out some 30 miles from the eye of the hurricane, and the tropical storm force winds extend out some 90 miles. So it's a rather small, compact hurricane that's swirling out here across the Caribbean. Now, we do forecast that there could be some slight intensification taking place as the day continues to wear on. Also, we think Hurricane Marilyn will probably more or less continue on its northwesterly trek. And as it does, the greatest strike probability would take it somewhere across the Virgin Islands or maybe across the eastern sections of Puerto Rico. And with that in mind, hurricane warnings continue at this time from just north of Guadalupe across the northern islands and extending westbound over through Puerto Rico. Hurricane warnings have been posted, meaning that there is that possibility of feeling hurricane force winds sometime within the next 24 hours. Here's our latest satellite picture of Hurricane Marilyn as it continues to swirl in place. Again, it's really churning up the waters across the Caribbean, and we might be seeing seas ranging anywhere from 10 to 12 feet high. So certainly some rough conditions throughout the eastern Caribbean. We have some heavy surf advisories in effect, also some coastal flood watches too in effect for the Virgin Islands as well as for portions of Puerto Rico. Now, it may not be uncommon to see some very heavy rains in association with this hurricane, maybe anywhere from 5 to 8 inches of rain. And in fact, already we've seen some heavy rains with this hurricane. Right around Martinique, we've had reports of over 4 inches of rain in the past 24 hours. Elsewhere, though, as we just head a little bit farther to the north of Maryland, we see the leftovers of Tropical Depression number 14, a low-pressure area that's swirling out here across the Atlantic, and we think that low could have a big influence in Maryland. Quite possibly, this might help to steer Maryland off in a northerly fashion, or at least that's what we're thinking right now, so that little upper-level low could have an impact on Hurricane Maryland. Elsewhere, we have a couple more waves that have been rolling off the African shoreline. One's about halfway between Africa and South America. Another one just now kind of coming closer towards the northern coast of South America. As we zoom in a little bit closer, we have relatively fair skies and quiet conditions throughout the northern Gulf. But here's a tropical wave that's been coming in across the Yucatan Channel. Right now, some showers and thunderstorms flaring up around the Bay of Campeche, or thunderstorms along coastal waters of the Yucatan Peninsula. And a lot of storms, too, now coming off the coast, the west central coast of Central America. So with this tropical wave, there could be some locally heavy downpours in association with it. As we head towards the East Pacific, more active weather to talk about. We have a couple more disturbances lined up across the intertropical convergence zone, but the biggest story here is Hurricane Ishmael. It's right now just making landfall across parts of Mexico. It's right here around Baja California. It's still packing winds of 75 miles per hour, although as it is encountering some land, it's going to be encountering a lot of friction with the land, and we do anticipate that Ishmael will start to weaken as we go through time, so probably by the next advisory, this could be downgraded to a tropical storm status, although right now it's still a hurricane. It's continuing to lift off generally towards the north. We still have some hurricane warnings too in effect around Baja California and for the west central coast of Mexico. Now, the biggest impact that Ishmael is going to have is that it's going to be feeding a lot of moisture in across the southwest. We'll be in for some heavy soaking rains, New Mexico, Texas, even across Arizona too, so some flash flood watches have been posted, so watch out for some localized flooding over the southwest. Finally, we head out towards the Pacific, and here too we have a big, monstrous tropical system. This is a Super Typhoon Oscar. It's lifting generally off towards the north, and it could be making some landfall around Japan a little bit later on, so this is a monstrous storm system that's really swirling and churning out here across the Pacific. Let's take you back down to our weather maps, and here's the forecast for today. Beautiful weather as we head stateside, some nice weather around Detroit and Cleveland. Beautiful weather too for Boston and for New York City, as we have high pressure building down from Canada, and with the high pressure, the air is sinking. And as the air sinks, that inhibits clouds from forming. So we're talking about wall-to-wall sunshine across the northeast. Nice conditions too farther towards the west, but again with Ishmael swirling and pulling inland, we're going to be seeing some heavy soaking rains across the southwest, so watch out for some localized flooding. We'll check out those travel trouble spots coming up in a moment.
Nokia One Touch Dialing lets you call important numbers with one touch of one button.
Emergency road services.
Amazing.
Hi, good Friday morning to you, and thanks for tuning into the Weather Channel with Vivian Brown, and I'm Cheryl LEMKE. Another very busy weather pattern today as we're watching some showers and storms overspreading the southwest. Also a chance for some flooding today as we're watching the moisture from Hurricane Ishmael kind of working its way across the southwest.
I'll tell you what, flood watches for West Texas, southern New Mexico, and the southeastern parts of Arizona. We'll keep you posted on Ishmael. Also, what's going on with Hurricane Marilyn? You know, it's out across the Atlantic, and we have for you the very latest advisory that we've...
Cheryl. Well, Ishmael continues to cause some major headaches across the southwest, but it's down in Florida that we've had some problems with the red tide. We take you there now. An algae bloom known as the red tide has literally killed thousands of fish along Florida's Gulf coastal beaches. The area currently affected by the red tide extends from southern Lee County northward over towards Sarasota and Manatee counties. Meanwhile, in the northeast, we finally saw some beneficial rains yesterday. Now, for Boston, though, just 1/10 of an inch of rain. And so we're still talking about a rainfall deficit there for the year with nearly 11.5 inches below normal. So it's still kind of bad across the northeast. We could certainly stand to see some rainfall there. But luckily in the last day or so there has been some welcome rains, typically 1/10 to 1/2, even close to an inch of rain for some spots around the northeast. Even heavier rains though pelted the southeast yesterday, especially throughout the Tennessee Valley. Some spots picked up 2 to 4 inches worth of rain. And then even heavier rain swamping parts of Texas. Here we had some copious amounts of rain. Some locales have picked up 5 to 6 inches of rainfall in the last day or so. But for today, we saw the rains coming down for Oklahoma and Texas. In the northeast, though, unfortunately, not a whole lot of wet weather to be found today. In the south, though, we've had some showers and thunder showers, mainly along coastal waters of North and South Carolina. If you're planning on going boating or fishing today, well, you might want to think twice about it because there has been a lot of wet weather here just off the coast from Wilmington and Cape Fear and running southward over towards Savannah. Elsewhere, though, a large batch of showers with some embedded thunderstorms rumbling across the upper Midwest. They're sliding off towards the east. We think that by later on today, maybe some powerful thunderstorms right around the Twin Cities. More sloppy weather too as we head southbound. Now keep in mind that much of this is in response to what used to be Hurricane Ishmael. Now it's a tropical storm, and all this deep tropical moisture continues to feed in across the southwest. We've had some heavy, steady rains, especially around Lee County here in eastern New Mexico. Persistent rains there, at least 3 inches since yesterday, and now some serious flooding taking place throughout that region. Flood warnings continue. More moisture, too, surging in from the Texas Panhandle back towards Oklahoma. Be careful across the Will Rogers Turnpike. Likewise, I-40, kind of a slow go this morning. As we take you back to our weather maps today, we have some beautiful weather, though, elsewhere around the country. There is a little bit of fog, though, this morning for lower Michigan and down towards the central Appalachians, but the fog should be burning off very shortly and eventually giving way to wall-to-wall sunshine. As we watch this big dome of high pressure building in across the northeast, that's going to provide all the sunshine. Relatively quiet weather too out across the west, but across the southwest, keep the rain gear close at hand today as all that moisture continues to feed in through Arizona, New Mexico, and across the Texas Panhandle. Now as far as
well, is the surf up? You're probably asking yourself that. We're headed into the weekend, so time for that boat and beach report. And get out your pencils and take a few notes, right? Where I probably don't want to go, at least not in the next 12 hours. We're talking about choppy seas and cloudy skies and kind of a dreary beach day from Wilmington down to Savannah, looking a little bit better right now. Probably Florence, you'll have to watch out there. A little further inland, maybe in improved condition, but certainly the beach weather not the greatest along the Carolinas. We're looking now along the Corpus Christi area. The thunderstorms are beginning to progress a little bit further to the south, so watch out if you're traveling, say, to the coast, say from Del Rio or from the Big Bend area. A little hectic going there. Notice that the coastline towards the Pacific, not bad at all. The seas are a bit choppy there, but that's kind of nice when you're looking for surf to be up, right? The winds indicated in orange are about 15 to 25. That's all along the Carolina coastline vicinity. A little stronger out towards the west. Your weekend outlook is next.
As hot across the southwest as it has been. No more 110-degree readings. Instead, you're going to see some 80s and 90s, so that's a nice switch. Boy, can you pick out the trough here in the east? Yeah, it's pretty obvious, isn't it? 60s and 70s. Temperatures are going to be pretty cool across the Great Lakes. Saturday right into Sunday morning. And you know what? By the end of the afternoon, it's going to be in the 70s. We keep things cool right here underneath the cloud cover and with the scattered showers, but we warm things up into the 70s in the Northeast. Like I said, pretty decent forecast shaping up for you. We have some 80s in store for you in Texas, as well as some 90s across the Southwest. The trough is pretty much embedded here, and it tries to move on out across the Central Plains, but it runs into that very strong ridge of high pressure. Now, it will break down the ridge slightly, and the 80s will be oozing on into the east a bit, but you know what? We are going to see a little bit of a change in store for folks in the east as warmer temperatures are going to be moving in. I do want to point out we keep things a little bit cool, actually as far south as Atlanta. Sunday, chance for scattered showers across the Tennessee Valley and back down into parts of Florida. We see some strong thunderstorms across the Rockies and on down into Texas, and this is the system I was telling you about. It's going to try to move eastward, but it runs into that ridge, and so it loses a little bit of its punch because that ridge is so strong, but it is persistent, and it keeps trying to move on eastward, and as it does so, we get that possibility for isolated thunderstorms into Iowa and Minnesota and Wisconsin by Wednesday. And notice the scattered showers and thunderstorms still likely here across Texas and Florida. Okay, temperatures, check them out. We've got some heat for you across southern Texas and on into the Southwest, but not as hot as it could be, certainly. Check out the possibility for severe weather. It's definitely on the ticket. Look at the severe thunderstorm watch we have in effect in Arizona, as well as South Texas and Montana and Wyoming. Now, as I show you national radar, I want you to notice that we do have some pretty decent thunderstorms in all of these locales, but we also have some rain and some thunderstorms to tell you about here in Illinois and even into Indiana, and the showers are persistent here in the Carolinas. So notice that from Chicago southward, all the way into South Illinois and even parts of Kentucky and Tennessee, we see some pretty nasty thunderstorms starting to break out, and these embedded strong thunderstorms have had a history of being severe at times. We have a number of severe thunderstorm warnings in effect. We take you to the Carolinas, we'll tell you about a very soaked pattern from Myrtle Beach on into the Outer Banks. And in Montana, the thunderstorms are starting to erupt. Actually, they extend on into parts of Wyoming. We've even had some severe thunderstorm warnings go into effect for parts of Montana and Wyoming. And earlier today, a pilot reported that he saw a funnel cloud near Casper, Wyoming. We still have some thunderstorms there. Stay with us, and we'll be talking more about the storms and where they're headed. Heavy rain in the Carolinas is creating a lot of flooding problems for that region, and that tops our look at the nation this hour. Good evening. I'm Jeanetta Jones.
Good afternoon. I'm Lisa Mozer. We also have severe storms in the southwest, and we'll look at more rainy conditions in the Ohio Valley in South Carolina. Even buses had a difficult time throughout the flooded streets. Over 7 inches of rain fell in this impassable, forcing people to reroute through this historic city. Also, rain made for a miserable commute today in St. Paul, Indiana. Showers rolled in by mid-morning and continued throughout. The heavy rains across the Piedmont extending up. The cloud cover is extending up towards Pennsylvania. We have another system. It's an upper river low. You can notice some of the circulation in our cloud cover pattern, and it is pushing down to the southeast, and as a result, destabilizing the atmosphere for Iowa, Illinois, and Indiana, and getting hit pretty hard right now. Terre Haute, Indiana. We'll take a closer look at that, but we do have some marine warnings that are in effect all along the South Carolina area, extending from Savannah, Georgia, across all of South Carolina's coastline, up around the Little River Inlet. So very choppy conditions there, winds above 30 miles per hour at times. Slowly we're beginning to see our shield of precipitation associated with this low push a little further to the east, and so conditions are improving over Charlotte. Not too good still towards Durham. However, the rainfall is lighter. The heaviest rain has been around Florence, South Carolina, and into Wilmington for this past hour or two. Looking a little closer to the Washington, D.C. area, the cloud cover has been in place all day, but you've only had a few spots of rain to come into the area, the vicinity just to your west, Charlottesville and down towards Richmond. Light rain has been plaguing the area much of the day. The thunderstorms that have been severe in nature just to the south of the Chicago vicinity, now crossing over the border from Illinois into Indiana, along 70 in the Terre Haute vicinity. Very difficult at this time, some severe thunderstorms there. We're talking about these thunderstorms that have been associated with some hail and some damaging winds above 50 miles per hour and the rainfall.
But temperatures will be held down for the most part there.
So some nice weather in the heartland for a change. Well, showers and storms continue today for across many parts of the nation. And how might that severe weather slow your evening commute? You're probably wondering, right?
Travel-wise is next after your local forecast. Stay with us.
Thanks, Rich. While sunshine and warm temperatures are the major player in much of the west, there are some areas affected by severe storms. Hail slowed traffic as well as pedestrians today in Denver. The storms moved into the city this afternoon. In addition, there were severe thunderstorms in a few different locations in the west, Montana down into Wyoming, where, by the way, in Fremont County, we had a tornado warning in the last half hour, so that has just expired. Keep in mind, severe thunderstorms are possible in Montana, Wyoming, Arizona, and here into Texas. So we have this watch in effect in Arizona. Take a look at the latest radar, and you can see scattered showers and thunderstorms circulating around an area of low pressure here, and so they're moving to the north or northwest. And we've had a few reports of severe thunderstorms. You can see a lot of rain. Albuquerque, Las Vegas, up toward Flagstaff, Prescott, and around Phoenix, we've had some severe thunderstorm warnings. Now around the Denver area, Jefferson County, severe thunderstorm warning. You can see these are intense thunderstorms that produce that hail that you saw in the video. They're moving to the north, again up through the Cheyenne, Rollins area, a few thunderstorms as well. Satellite picture here shows us the players pretty well. We have an area of low pressure in the upper atmosphere here, spinning around, and as that slowly moves up into Colorado through the weekend, we'll see more thunderstorms, we think, produced out of this. Up into Montana and into Colorado, of course, now, as Richard shows you, severe thunderstorm watches are in effect here, and you can see some intense cells. These are also basically moving to the north, this one around Lander, producing some severe weather. So ahead of our front and with our area of low pressure, two separate areas really that we'll be watching for severe weather. Temperatures, well, actually pretty nice, pretty comfortable. We have warm readings across much of the United States. That includes the northern plains where we have the upper 70s. Chicago to Marquette, you can bet there's a little rain around, and that's why you're not quite as warm as some of the surrounding areas. We have had some severe weather with this area of low pressure as well. Again, another slow mover that will produce rain for the next at least the next couple of days, which means Saturday and Sunday. Tomorrow it'll be almost in the exact same spot where it is today, and then it'll start moving. But we have some thunderstorms swirling around the Springfield area, St. Louis, and on over into Indianapolis. We've had a few warnings here and there. We'll be passing them along to you through this evening. Let's take a look at the forecast, though, and see how we do. This area of low pressure, again, still producing some thunderstorms across Illinois, it looks like, through the day on Saturday. Rain down to Kentucky, Nashville, Atlanta, chance of some rain as well. Through the west, we'll have more scattered showers and thunderstorms in the mountains, and also still ahead of this front, so Montana could be 3 days in a row with thunderstorms for you. Precipitation actually is likely to be heavy in some locations, 2 or 3 inches possible. Temperatures for Saturday morning, cooling crisp again. And how about cool and rainy by afternoon in the central Appalachians? That seems to be a pattern, Rich, we just can't break.
And it looks like that's going to continue for a while, too, unfortunately. Well, how long will the rain last in the Midwest? If you're traveling there, stay with us for an update.
We will be back with Travel Lines after your local forecast.
I blame you more about the weather watches in the West.
Okay, thanks, Rich. While sunshine and warm temperatures are the major players in the west, there are some areas that are affected by severe storms. Hail slowed problems that are setting up here in the west. You can see 3 different severe weather areas for tonight. Rich already covered Texas. Let me show you the setup here for severe weather, and we'll kind of let you know about the unsettled weather that's coming up in the next few days to come. Greg, let's take a look at that. And there we go, unsettled weather for the southwest. Let me show you what's coming up. The problem is we have a deep trough here in the west and an area of low pressure that's kind of snuck in the last 24 hours. It looks like that'll start traveling, head up into Utah, into Colorado, and with that we have a little bit of extra lift. We do have plenty of moisture now to contend with. So that's been coming in, being kind of sucked up into our system from the south, and we'll have scattered strong storms and locally heavy rain. Sometimes when you get thunderstorms here in the west, all the rain evaporates before it gets to the surface. But now it looks like we have enough moisture out there for the potential of strong to severe thunderstorms that will have a lot of rain. So again, let's take a look at it. We have our different areas. Montana, Wyoming, and also down here into Arizona to look at. Here's the latest radar, and actually even with this you can kind of see how the circulation is coming up around our area of low pressure. So a rainy night in Flagstaff and Prescott over here east of Tucson and Cochise County. We do have a severe thunderstorm warning in effect at this hour. Large hail is possible in addition to the heavy rain and gusty winds. There's our area of low pressure. Now you can see it real well on the satellite picture. Satellite picture's jumping around a little bit. Well, you can see the thunderstorms blossoming all along our mountain ranges here, up into the Lander, Wyoming area, up into Billings. We've had a few severe thunderstorm warnings here. Large hail is possible. We did have a tornado warning earlier for Fremont County here in Wyoming. That has expired, but now there's a severe thunderstorm warning in effect. And it does not look like tornadoes will be widespread, but when you have severe weather, you still have to kind of keep in mind that that's always a possibility. So ahead of this front and with this area of low pressure, we'll have some storms to talk about over the next few days. That'll hold temperatures back like in Phoenix. Look at that, 85 degrees. Meanwhile, it looks like a warm afternoon again and a hot weekend coming up. For the plains, it looks like all the rough weather will be either east or west of you. We have this one area of low pressure, scattered thunderstorms ahead of this. We've also had a few reports of severe weather. Again, you can see the spin real well in the satellite picture. This is going to be a slow mover over the next few days. So scattered showers and thunderstorms here today will be almost in the same spot for tomorrow. All right, quick look at our forecast.
Okay, let's have...
This Travel-Wise is sponsored by Holiday Inn Hotels. We're spending $1 billion to make every Holiday Inn as good as the best Holiday Inn. Well, we've been talking severe weather today in several different areas, actually. We have watches in our red zone, so at this point, all of you should be on the lookout for the potential of severe weather. And also back here in Illinois, Indiana, we've had just a few strong cells here and there and a few reports of severe weather. So keep that in mind. Even a few in New York, Herkimer and Broome counties most recently. So here are the watches. Severe thunderstorms possible in all of these areas. We've had a couple of tornado warnings in Wyoming in the last hour, and there's still that possibility, so always keep that in mind. If you have severe weather, an isolated tornado or two may pop up. We get a tornado watch when they're more likely. So here you go, down into Arizona. Can you believe all of this rain? By the way, in Cochise County, that severe thunderstorm warning has been canceled. The thunderstorm cell has weakened. And you can see this is Cochise County here, so it doesn't look real impressive. But rain up towards Prescott and Flagstaff and Phoenix. Boy, it's been kind of a cool afternoon with all of this rain around. I think you're in the mid-80s right now. Albuquerque to Las Vegas, and then traveling Interstate 25. Keep in mind, you'll be running through some thunderstorms here coming from Colorado into northern New Mexico. In Texas, this cluster of storms has been holding together since last night, and a little bit farther to the north it produced as much as 10 inches of rain according to Doppler radar estimates, and heavy rain will be one of the biggest threats here. These cells coming into San Antonio are intense, also down here around Laredo, and we do have warnings in Dimmitt County at this time for severe thunderstorms. We also have a few isolated cells here in Wyoming up into Montana. We'll look at a few more radars. Stay tuned. We'll be checking that out as well as your local forecast. Well, as you're making plans for your weekend, you may be thinking about heading to the beach or heading out on the local lake on your boat. Great Lakes look a little stormy, especially around Lake Michigan. Lake Erie looks questionable, especially the western half tomorrow. Lake Ontario might be okay. Heading down toward Florida, you can see basically we're looking at full sun today, so one of the few locations that won't have to worry about too many storms, it looks like. Looks good for tomorrow too. So here's the Saturday forecast. Yellow indicates 5 to 15 mile per hour winds. Will be a little bit breezier as you get south of Chesapeake Bay, although water temperatures at least get out of the 50s as you head a little farther to the south. 70s and 80s can be found along Florida's coastline and into the Gulf of Mexico, of course, which is warming up quickly this year. Light winds, 5 to 15 miles per hour. Winds will be stronger. There is a front headed toward the west coast. Not a lot of rain with that, but we'll be kicking the winds up somewhat. We'll tell you what else that front may bring as we check our weekend outlook, and we'll see who gets the rain for the next couple of days.
Better weather.
Thanks for joining us. As promised, we have the 5-day planner here, and that'll take you through the next 5 days, obviously. And we have some good news for the folks in the Northeast, and not so good news maybe for the folks in the plains, where you have been enjoying some wonderful weather. Probably by early week, you may see some rain moving into your area. Now, in the Southwest, kind of unusual. We have an upper-level low in this area here, sparking off some thunderstorms this afternoon, some of them severe thunderstorm watch in the area. And tomorrow, we think that you may see some more severe weather in the Southwest tomorrow. With the upper level low still in the area, very slow to move out, afternoon heating, dew points are pretty high in the area. You could see some afternoon thunderstorms once again. And even in Montana and to Wyoming, we may see some afternoon thunderstorms where we've had severe weather, it seems like the last couple of days in this area. Tomorrow you may be under the gun again. Another day or two of nice weather in the plains, but to the east, another on the trough on the side of the ridge, this side of the ridge, we have the low coming down around the trough. We have dew points are pretty high in this area, and we think maybe some thunderstorms here, even some heavy rainfall amounts. Atlanta, you may escape it, maybe the northern suburbs seeing a shower or two, but Savannah back to Tallahassee, you're looking okay. Maybe a few thunderstorms in the afternoon with the sea breeze in Florida. And even Texas continues to get the heavy rainfall here. Maybe some areas getting over 3 inches locally. A lot of flash flood warnings in effect. We've had amounts of over 3 to 4 inches already in some of the areas, and it looks like the rain will be there for a while yet. Even in the Ohio Valley, some bouts of heavy rainfall, which we don't need. The heaviest rain tomorrow will probably be in Ohio and the eastern part of Ohio Valley, but for now anyway, into Indiana, into Illinois, where some thunderstorms now are dumping some heavy rainfall and even some hail in the area. Lows, well, they're going to be pretty mild up into the Ohio Valley in the 60s, not getting any lower than that with the cloud cover and the dew points kind of being high here. But to the east, into the Northeast, we're looking at lows in the 30s and 40s. So along the coastal areas, they'll probably stay in the 50s tonight, and 50s again in Georgia, where Atlanta, I believe, this morning set a record low. So we will see another cool evening on tap for the folks in the Southeast. So that's good as far as your power bill is concerned for air conditioning, right? That may change, though. We're going to see temperatures start to warm up here in the next couple of days. Saturday, we'll see another hot day in the northern plains, some 90s in Montana, again giving way to some afternoon thunderstorms. While Sunday, 80s all the way into North Dakota, keeping 60s here in the mid-Atlantic states, and 70s, we're starting to get rid of the 60s a little bit here, maybe in the Appalachian Mountains, but 70s now for the coastal areas, where Raleigh-Durham today not even getting out of the 50s. So 70s definitely welcomed here, and then now we're wearing down the 70s, so we will see an overall warming trend for the east, and 80s for much of the country by Wednesday. So not bad at all as far as temperatures are concerned. No extremes on the map, really. Kind of average for this time of year, maybe a little bit above average for the northern plains. All right, by Sunday, we're looking at the weather, and if I can advance this frame, there we go. Thanks, Jeff. Well, a storm system that has plagued the eastern United States this week is finally beginning to push out to sea, but not before leaving its mark on the southeast coast. Heavy rain certainly left its impression on Charleston, South Carolina today. Over 7 inches of rain fell in the city since midnight. Several streets were impassable, making it difficult for motorists to get around. Many people had to take alternate routes. Now, the rain has tapered off tonight. Good news for the folks in Charleston. Actually, Charleston today set 2 records, one for rainfall amounts in a 24-hour period, and also for a record low maximum temperature. Only 65 degrees today in Charleston set the record. So, and those are the kind of records we don't like to break, right? The good news, that rainfall is now heading northward. Not so good news for the Outer Banks or even eastern parts of North Carolina, where the rain is now moving in, although it looks like the rain is not as heavy now in that area as it was earlier in South Carolina. Another system here, an upper level low tracking through the Midwest. Underneath it, thunderstorms, severe thunderstorm warning right now in St. Clair, and also in Washington counties in Illinois. Already had reports of 1-inch hail with these storms, so be
And I'm Sharon Resultan. The first tropical storm of the season has now been downgraded to a tropical depression. We're going to have the latest on Andres. And the East Coast got a drenching today. Let's turn now to our attention to the storms, though. So still very active as we work our way into the south and west. Oh, much of the western part of the nation, actually. As a matter of fact, all along this band of clouds here, there is the potential for some thunderstorms, and some of those storms may be severe. So from central Montana back down, not so much into Wyoming, but into parts of Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, we have had reports of some severe weather and even a few thunderstorms, one thunderstorm heading toward 29 Palms. So we've had some very active weather here. Let me once again put this into motion for you so you can see a little twist here. Do you see that down there across southwestern Arizona? That's our upper level low. The bad news is the thing doesn't want to move very much, so we're kind of stuck with this same weather pattern right on into your Saturday. And if you're waiting for the good news, I can't think of any right now, except that it's going to maybe keep the extreme heat out of your way across the southwest for at least a couple more days. Around the Four Corners region, we continue to see a few scattered showers across this area, heading on up through the Denver region. Again, a few thunderstorms here. We'll take a closer inspection with the radar. And several severe thunderstorms reported now into central and north central Montana. That's where most of the activity is at this point in time. Here's a look at where you'll find the strong to severe thunderstorms. Again, severe thunderstorms may produce 3/4-inch hail or larger. So could find also some damaging winds. That might be the primary threat with some of these thunderstorms in the vicinity of the upper level low, and maybe even some heavy rain, some hail and damaging winds into South Texas. There's a look at all our watch areas that remain in effect through the early and mid-evening, and even down into South Texas, the potential for some severe weather. A look at all the cloud-to-ground lightning. Boy, that's impressive, isn't it? Especially when you notice that the white is what is happening over, say, the latest, the last 10 to 15 minutes or so. So still very active across much of this region. Closer inspection here, and we'll show you what's going on from just south of Waco back down through San Antonio. We have had some reports of some heavy rain in parts of South Texas.